this one. All right, so first off, let's tackle the literality of what I am saying, right? Well, the literality and the figurativity of what I'm saying, right? The figurative is the gaslight, right? Because gaslight is a colloquial term for a psychological tactic in the current day zeitgeist, right? Which involves various forms of psychological projection, so on and so forth, in other more formal terms. But the literalness is the Jesus thing, right? And let's say that Jesus existed and all those things in the Gospels that they said happened. Let's just say that. And I mean from a non-supernatural point of view. I'm just saying that, like, it is attested that the dude was there and that these things, and that he did these things, knew these people, etc., etc. All right? Now, with all of that being the case, what makes Jesus necessary outside of how much you think that Hebrew prophecy is very important or not? And it's a question of how well do you understand what is literal and what is mythological and what is fable, which is kind of mythological in nature, that is collected into this book that is specifically for a Mesopotamian region of the world, and only for a Mesopotamian region of the world, which only has a fraction of its pagan mythic origins intact around an entirely reweaved in the literature story to largely serve the arrival of the imposter sky gods, right? Going back to antiquity. But now we're talking about the alleged turn of the, millennium or whatever, hitting that point that in retrospect will become called the before Christ, right? You have to understand where did our current Anno Domini count ultimately get calculated from, right? And you look at all the church records, and all the church records are using calendar shit. They're using fucking like equinoxes and solstices and stuff, right? They're doing astronomy. And then they template over the astronomy the mythos. So it's an astrotheology with a highly stripped celestial mythological archetype occurring with Jesus as the Son and all these other tropes that are meant to be there. But what's the most important part, right? You see, Jesus as this character carries all this negative baggage that gets ignored with all of the positive side, because the negative baggage is literally the opposite of it. Because unfortunately, guess what? If you actually take putting on the Christ as a literal solitary archetype You know, when you start becoming the guy that says I'm Jesus, right? Or I'm a Messiah or the Messiah, right? Once you do that, that's when you've proven that you don't get the point. You don't get the point, right? Because you are saying, you may say it like everyone else is supposed to be, but then ultimately you make it an overinflated thing to serve your own hubris. Nobody wants that. So you have to hide it very carefully. You end up going sociopathic about it, right? This is the problem, right? Because we are lying to ourselves in the idea that a mortal can go into deification in that sense, right? Because there's a big difference between like me in my avatar, which is not a deity, but it echoes the deities that are meant for me, right? You know, it's just like for anybody who knows me long enough, before I was really into Thor, I definitely didn't look like Thor was into me at all. I got into Thor, and you know, now I'm several levels above the game. But Thor has a lot of that Jupiterian level arrogance. I have to keep myself in check. And I'm just going to stay in my lane for the most part. For the most part. There's people that I know, you know, it's just like there's people that really enjoy talking to me, people who don't. And I'm no longer hungry for anything that doesn't respond to any reasonable channels. You know, it's just like, hey, get a hold of me about a thing in an email, right? All right, I'm a stranger that wants to get to know you and do a thing. Email goes out, no response. All right, fine. I'm not even worth being told no. So the framing mechanism of the Gospels, right, is to allege that there was no brotherhood, that there was no peace, that there was no kindness, that everybody, that the vast majority of people were a slave or being burdened under the pyramid of hierarchy in all ways, shapes, and forms. That if you were outside of their city oppressions, that you were being run amok by their warriors that they would send out into the realm and lay claim to it. And it's all this particular way in which you've had the pre-Christian world colored over your eyes. And I was getting into an argument about this kind of concept of the madness sweep of Christianity that is well documented. Because if you look at the documentation of what the Christian takeover was actually about, from the hierarchy people that were getting in on the quote-unquote good graces of the people below, they were creating a new level of authoritarian institution. that's all it was really about, right? It was new upper classes that are the kinds of people that probably didn't have strong feelings about the gods and easily persuadable and became Christians. And then built this whole story of, the world will finally be a good place when it's just us, right? And then there's a certain way that those people behaved that was alien to the pagan when they came into pagan lands after they developed in their accursed mystery schools. And I saw a very cool piece of art that Thomas Sheridan posted in his group that led me to a very good question that was the only response I got to it was a bunch of people trolling, which I thought was interesting because I don't think they understood the question and mistaken me for someone defending Christendom as a sanity or something like that. But they won't tell me what they're really saying, other than their answer to the question is the ass of a goat with a cross over its anus. I'm like, okay. It's like fantastic. And so I threw a retaliatory insult in kind. He said something absurd about it, and I changed the subject with astrology. And then the conversation started to open up a pinch, but really was going nowhere. But it was amusing to see the thought process going on in this person's head. And my question is, what, like, because you have to see, right, like, you're talking about the clash of worlds, right? They're talking to a guy who's read Heidegger's Being and Time, right? So, there's the Dasein of Ireland, of the pagan world of Ireland, and then, these Christians get, come in and force with their traditions and way of life, which is completely different than than other persons, right? Like, they didn't realize that there was this whole, like, one true God thing going on at first, right? It's like a lot of things that people didn't understand about a whole lot of things. And then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, this Christianity is no longer just this thing everybody's offering. Now I can't fucking buy butter unless I kneel before the Christ. Right? And you've done nothing wrong. You've not actually, quote, sinned for reals. Right? By your pagan standards, which does no harm unto other men because you're in accord with natural law by and large, like most just people that lived out their effing lives, of the non-raiding cultures of paganism. And especially if you if you weren't wealthy and had slaves, the Christians couldn't harp on you because they needed to change your way of life with slavery. You were a free man, right? So they couldn't accuse you of the sin of slavery, which then becomes unsinned later on. But it's so weird, isn't it? Because it was only a particular kind of Christianity which was an echo of the paganism for it to transfer over. So it's this weird fucking thing. So that was my question to Thomas, was what did Christianity look like from a Cthulhian, from like a Lovecraftian perspective coming into the pagan world before Christians? This question gets answered with a meme of a goat with a crucifix over its anus. And it's just like, are you offending me because you think I'm a Christian and that offends me? No. I have great fondness for goats and rams, and this is the Hocus Pocus group. This is a pagan place, right? Like there's a level of psychoanalysis that I think can get a little out of hand, and questions have this interesting relationship with scrutiny. When is a question scrutinizing, and when do you scrutinize a question? Right? And the world's no fun if you can't freaking like poke at people's fucking worlds here and there, right? And say like, just curious, do you have the most solid understanding of Odin, right? And you should thank somebody for fucking, it's just like if I'm a mechanic and I notice how your car is, and I know something about the track record of cars that have that situation, I'm going to, as a courtesy, say, hey, I notice that you've got an X, Y, and Z fucking situation over here. In my experience, this is what I know about it. Just as a heads up, right? It's kind of like that. And like, because you shouldn't have to explain, you shouldn't have to preface a question that has no personal agenda, right? The question wasn't laced in any kind of personal attack agenda. It wasn't there to challenge anybody. It was addressing Thomas, and I am not a stranger. I'm not a stranger on social media. Entirely possible that I'm not really that I'm not really gonna fucking have a conversation with him, but that's okay by me. Hey, what's up, Sakone? So yeah. So this is my ultimate point, is that like, you're going, like, people that they're trying to be transcendent of Jesus, but at the same time they don't want to be transcendent of Jesus, right? So like, I see this a lot with all sorts of people that are now doing all of the things, and it's like they're trying their best to be like everything anyway. So thus there's a place for Christianity, because they know that there's good in Christianity, and there really isn't good in Christianity. The good of pagan people could not be taken away from them by Christianity, and forced Christianity to appeal to them. And it doesn't really work anywhere, this faith, right? It just, even, it's like Thomas talks about, like, send it back to the people of the sands. And, the original template was for the sands, because that's where they started. But, like, look, there's a lot of people that have that conspiracy theory that the Gospels happened in France. No. I think that in the time of all these foundings, we underestimate that the way the religious mindset was. It was the same thing as saying this is Odin's Hill, right? It's the living mythos. They would set up a Bethlehem in France, and a this in France, and a that in France. They go from town to town. In that little region of the country, they would perform the rituals of the fucking gospel. They were doing sympathetic magic. They're doing ritual magic in these towns. If the town is named a Bethlehem or something, it meant that every year when they were, making their Christianized solstice-style festival, they'd go to Bethlehem and they'd do a fucking thing for Jesus over there. Right? And that's what it was like. Like, I live in Connecticut, right? This is a Puritan state. Right? Like, we used to have witch laws here. We definitely had slaves way back in the day. So we had our own, like, Salem shit happen in this state. Right? And so these town names came from a devotion. It came from a devotion to the Bible, right? And back in antiquity, that's what they were doing. France and Germany and stuff, that stuff was like, if you look at this is gonna be funny, right? This is gonna be funny when you think about it. If you look at the fucking Mediterranean and you look at fucking Italy coming down like the boot, just look at it like it's a tree on its sides. The trunk, Italy would be the trunk of a tree, right? So the trunk of the tree of the Roman Empire is Italy. And then at the top, just before the canopy breaks and goes to East and West Empire as such, Germany, France, Germania is like right there on top of Italy. Right? Germany's like right next to Italy, so on and so forth, right? So there's always been this blend from the Germans and the various Italic tribes going on for a very, very long time. The association between Etruscan runes and various Germanic and Norse runes are astounding, right? It definitely shows that they were within the same kind of cosmological universe, right? So these universes dealt with a whole lot of crazy shit. What did that crazy look like? What was it like having no reference point for the Christian mindset smacking you across the face, going through the world? Because did they actually look at it like a squid? Because the importance of the question is that Lovecraft was describing the old gods as a way to describe the pagan gods. It was him playing off of his personal, like, fears and reconciliation on his shamanic journey into becoming a pagan himself, and putting that stamp of threatening bewitch, right? Like, this was the whole bit, right? So this is me asking, it's like a hypothetical, right? Because Thomas understands the Lovecraftian occultism, metaphysics, psychology, history extremely well. He's kind of near there expert wise, right? So I'm asking if he's explored that realm. Maybe that question inspires him to fucking make a video, write a book. I don't know. That's all. It's all I'm fucking doing. It's all I'm fucking doing. And apparently these questions are forbidden to some people. It's just like they want to just come out and say, that question, I can take a shit on it. Like, this is trolldom, right? Um, this is what you gotta deal with. It's fine. It's funny. It's funny in its own fucking way, right? It's hysterical because it kind of puts that terrible. It's just like, ha 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 ha. I made you feel like shit in front of all these people that you're trying to fucking corner respect for, right? Like that's what they're fucking doing up and down, right? It's a silly little fucking high school game, right? It's a high school game, um, because they're, people play high school games are protecting you from adulthood, right? After the Cathars were wiped out, reprogramming. Sure, you're right. That makes sense. And so there would be a different kind of Christianity before and after the Cathars. See, I'll have to go and maybe take a peek at that history one day. I'll have to try and remember that. Thank you, Senor Sacon. Let me see here. All right, DE. I've got you on. I've got you on mod mode. I know you're good people. I've seen you around. And let's see. This person here. They can go hiding. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to go take care of some things at home. And just remember that that there's a certain level of the world which there's nothing wrong with. That happens to be there, with or without Christianity, because that's human being baseline quality of life. There's no reason to make a Christian feel like that is threatened. None whatsoever. It's making them understand that their faith has no bearing on the, quote, salvation of the world. That everything is fucking fine. Molto ben pesan. I guess that's a reference point for the Cathar invasion, or the Cathars were wiped out. Anyway, and I should know this stuff because I should know French history because I'm part French. Hey, what's up, Violence? Yeah. Because, right, because between the emphasis on the passion of the Christ, right, the whole suffering that Homeboy went through, as depicted in the story very innocently, as a man wronged by the world, right? Because it implies a certain what pagan justice is. Right? It makes it seem like all of Rome, all of the people everywhere were barbaric, like what happened to him, right? It's just like it's the mark of this is the low point of humanity, these dark ages, right? Look, man, with the, unless, you're an evil person or something, it's just like Christianity brought an end to the culture of human sacrifice. They took human sacrifice out of culture. Death penalty, effectively, right? Just they definitely reduced it to something involved in justice. Basically, it's just like God's injustice and shit. Can do sacrifice because it's part of the ritual of the trial and determining guilt and punishment for sins against your fellow man, yada yada yada, right? So Christians brag about their way, and then you look at the goddamn fucking Dark Ages, and it's just like, Christians, you come into power and we lost plumbing, we lost architecture, we lost agriculture, we lost all the things that holds a civilization up. That didn't happen overnight. That happened because of you Christians slowly over time giving up on those fucking institutions. Right? That's the context of what the Christian was doing then. And then we got to sit in a Dark Ages. Everybody had fucking converted, and not one generation for decades fucking woke up one day and said, hey, maybe we should get that plumbing back that our ancestors had. Remember how the Romans had plumbing? Plumbing was swell. I'm sick of shoveling. No. We had so many fucking problems, we didn't want to go back to an easier way of getting rid of shit. This was our civilization after Christians came in. We stopped fucking piping off our shit. We fucking kept our shit real local. And it showed. I'm not wrong. Right. So anyway, I'm starving. I'm gonna catch you guys later.